Before my conversation with Zach Moore about the Kryptonian AI Brainiac, I'm joined by our pal Tim Bruns for a little video game talk. Tim, how's it going?
I'm doing well, Anthony. How are you?
I'm great. So, as you know, as the audience knows, we've been talking about Brainiac across time and media in these episodes, though I did draw the line at video games. It's a little outside my wheelhouse. It's sort of its own thing. And at some point in the course of this podcast, we'll get there as far as a deeper exploration of Superman in video games. But after last week's episode on the Milton Fine Brainiac, you reached out to me, or actually you posted on the Facebook page, to tell me about the Milton Fine Brainiac appearance in the 1992 Sunsoft video game Superman for the Sega Genesis, yeah?
I did. It's an oldie, almost a goodie, but Brainiac does show up.
Yeah, he does. Not just Brainiac, but we also get the Post-Crisis Metallo in there as well, and fairly classic renditions of Prankster and Mxyzptlk as well. But boy, Mixie is blink and you miss him, to the point that I reached out to you because I had seen descriptions. I had read details about the game online, and a number of them mentioned Mixie being in the game. And then I watched a YouTube gameplay of the entire game. It was about 35 minutes. I watched it on double speed, so I got through it relatively quickly. But I finished the thing and I'm like, where the hell was Mixie? And then I'm thinking to myself, classic Wikipedia, got it wrong. And I messaged you and I'm like, am I crazy? Or is Mixie not there? But you said, no, he's there when Superman is battling Metallo on the train. He's there in the background. It really is. It's so fleeting, but he's there. Yeah. Got to count him.
Yep. And I enjoy the instruction manual description of Mxyzptlk because I think, in a way, it applies to the comics as well. They say, he's coming in, he's this fifth dimensional imp, he's there to irritate you. You can't fight him. Don't even try. Just do your best to avoid him. I went, okay, right on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I appreciate you tipping me off about this game. Like when I was doing my Brainiac research, admittedly on Wikipedia, that was part of it. They have a whole section, Brainiac and other media. So I saw this section on the video games and I kind of made mental note of it. But because you specifically pointed it out and you shared some screen caps, it just got me kind of curious. So like I said, I read about it. I watched the gameplay. I haven't played the game myself. But like we said, this is the 1992 Superman game from Sunsoft for the Sega Genesis. Now, Sunsoft is the same company that would go on to do the Death and Return of Superman video game. That is my all-time favorite.
Yeah, a far superior gaming experience. If you were going to play one of them, that's the one to play.
But, yes, I agree. But this was enough in the same wheelhouse that I felt very much at home watching the gameplay for this. Yeah. So this is classic 16-bit side-scrolling beat-em-up style game with 5 levels or rounds, as they call them. Mm-hmm. And it's the same basic setup. And when I say basic, this is a very bare bones video game experience. Yeah. But each level or round starts with Clark changing into Superman, and then there's a headline that's teeing up what the quest is going to be about. So children missing, and then you end up battling Prankster, who's taken the kids, or bodies found in a building, and then you end up battling Metallo in the train, and so on. And it all culminates in this battle with not just Brainiac, not just any Brainiac, but specifically that Milton Fine Brainiac from the comics at the time. Amazing.
Green-skinned, mental trickery to throw Superman off at the end, making doubles of himself, zooming around. So not bad for the day.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. I know we do have at least some younger audience members who follow this podcast. So it's like, if you grew up in the more modern era of gaming and you watch this or you play this, you'll be like, what the hell is this? But for me, who my glory days of playing video games were in the 90s, and this style of side-scrolling gameplay, like I said, for me, I just felt right at home with this. Now, you played this when it originally came out?
I did. I was very excited to get it. I sent you a screen cap of the advertisement that was run in the comics and on the back at the time, which was admittedly kind of a lazy advertisement. It's just a picture of the front of the box and the words kryptonite not included, which bit of a strange advertisement, but okay.
Yeah, why would it
be? Yeah. No screen caps of the game or anything, just that box art on it. But I was really excited to get it. It was a tricky game to finish because I didn't have a game genie or anything like that at the time. So you had standard 3 lives and only so much energy to get through. So I also watched a few YouTube recaps to refresh my memory 30 years after the fact. And I noticed that the players were zipping right through and their energy bar was never going down. So they were having a much better time of it than I did back when. But things I remember most about it were, one, you mentioned Clark changing into Superman at the beginning of each level, and it's an animated version of kind of the classic art from the letters page back in the day of Reaction. So that drew me right in the first time I turned it on. My big turn off was that on many of the levels you could not fly at will. You had to run or jump. And if you can't fly at will in a Superman video game, somebody made a bad decision during programming somewhere along the line. So that part I didn't care for. But I liked being able to fight some of the modern takes on the villain. I liked Metallo, even though when he does ultimately open his metal chest cavity there to show the kryptonite, doesn't really do much, just kind of a pose for him. And, Brainiac was fun to fight at the end. That was the most visually dynamic. So I liked that part. And the other part, and this is just memory lane for me, I mentioned at the beginning of each of the rounds, you get that Clark into Superman. At the end of each of the rounds, you get another little headline where, Superman saves the day or whatever it is. And I know it's not exactly the music, but it was close enough back when. It reminded me of the Ruby Spears cartoon, the little segment they would do at the end where it was Clark growing up, and the play out music here were pretty close for me. So that, just for nostalgia, was a winning thing for me back when.
Oh yeah, those Superman family album vignettes. Yep. Yeah. Oh, I didn't make the connection musically, but that's cool. But no, as far as the difficulty level, I mean, I talked about this when we did our whole episode a couple of years ago on the Death and Return of Superman video game. I mean, man, did I have a hard time with that as a kid. And it was only now playing it on an emulator and plugging in multiple cheat codes. That was the only way I was able to get through it. No shame, though. It's a very hard game. I'm glad I got there, however I got there.
It is a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. But to your point about the capabilities of the character in the game. So yeah, basically you're either, most of the levels you're on the ground, you're running, you're jumping, you're punching, and you have to collect icons in order to power up your punch ability.
Right.
And then there's at least one level where instead of punching, you are spinning and drilling. I think that's in the Metallo level when you're going underground. Yep. And then there are other levels or portions of levels where you're flying and blasting heat vision. But there too, you have to collect icons to power up the heat vision. Is that right? Yeah.
Yep.
Once
They're
again,
not making it easy. It's not easy to be Superman no matter what.
Yeah, but definitely challenging. I mean, I guess some of the other observations that I had with this, one, as far as who or what you're fighting primarily in these levels, they're mostly robots.
Yeah, little drone is floating around.
Little drones. Are we to? I know I'm looking for connective tissue that might not be here, but I mean, are we looking at this as all a plot of Brainiac in some way, shape, or form? And that's why, because if nothing else, the thread of Lois being abducted and then placed in that rocket ship that takes off at the end of round 3, and then we're in space. I mean, that's at least connected. But because of all the robots, are we to assume this is Brainiac's effect or influence throughout?
It would be nice to think that the programmers had that in mind, but these same guys who wouldn't let you fly on every level, I think they were just looking for something for him to punch.
Oh, speaking of that, so we mentioned the first level with these missing children. First of all, very dark.
Yeah.
But at the end of it, it turns out to be Prankster, and you fight Prankster. Like Superman just punching Prankster. I'm like, are we back in season 1 of the George Reeves series where he was just clocking the bad guys left and right, and they were fine?
Yep. I remember messaging you after one of the episodes, going, what are they making these bad guys out of that you get a punch from George Reeves, Superman, and then you get back up?
Yeah. I know. I know. And well, on that show, right, we always talk about, well, this was a more modestly powered Superman. Maybe he's pulling his punches. I don't know. But yeah, here it was funny. Yeah, you're just pummeling the prankster at the end of that first level. So
who is fighting you with flowers. So,
yeah,
interesting choices all around.
Yeah, the third level or round, that's where Lois goes missing, and then the ship that she's placed in takes off at the end of it, and that leads Superman into space. Right. But the boss at the end of the third level, after Prankster and then Metallo, and before Brainiac, at the end of that third level, just a generic guy in a flying suit.
Kind of a jetpack.
Yeah, it was actually, it felt like a precursor to the winged Cadmus agents who you would fight in the Death and Return of Superman video game. But they weren't from Cadmus. It's just like, could we not have plugged? I know maybe I'm getting greedy here because we had Prankster, we had Metallo, we had Mix's Pedal, but I'm just like, for that one level, could we not have plugged in Parasite or something?
Right. Honestly, when I looked at that guy, I had to check myself and my Superman history because there was this part of me that, especially for you looking at this game, I really wanted Conduit, and I went, oh, this was a year or two before Conduit came around. But I feel like that would have made the game for you.
Oh my God, 1,000% that would have made the game for me. But so speaking of the timing, so the game came out in North America in December 92. The Panic in the Sky comic book storyline started in January 92, so the beginning of that year. Now, I'm no video game expert, but my understanding, I'm sure it takes a while to develop and actually create these games. So I don't think the timing would have worked. But I say to myself, Sunsoft's Death and Return adaptation was a very winning outing as far as I'm concerned. There were only, when we talked about that, like there were a couple of things where I'm like, oh man, it would have been cool to play as Supergirl reclaiming Superman's body or play as Green Lantern fighting Mongol. But other than that, they gave us pretty much everything I would have wanted, adapting that story into that style of video game. So I say to myself, even though I'm not the biggest Panic in the Sky fan, as people heard last week, but I liked it well enough. And I'm like, oh man, if this could have been an adaptation of that, where you've got Draga and Maxima and Matrix Supergirl and some of the other DC heroes, like, that would have been cool.
It would have been cool. There were many times, if and when you do a Superman video game deep dive, I feel like that sentiment is going to come back a lot. It would have been cool if only they had really carried the ball to the finish line.
Yeah. Well, speaking of other video game entries, I do know that Brainiac 13 pops up at the end of, I believe it's the Man of Steel video game from the early 2000s.
Yeah.
I took a look at some of that gameplay. A little rough looking, but I appreciate the character being there.
Also incredibly difficult and also an incredibly disappointing ending after that battle. Get ready. Buckle up.
But I got to tell you, and see, I partially blame you, Tim, because now I feel you got this in my head. Because what have I been doing? I've been on Amazon and I've been looking at these consoles that allow you to play old NES and Super Nintendo cartridges. And then they have the Sega counterparts. And also over the holidays, my sister-in-law brought up an old Xbox that they weren't using anymore. So now I have that. Plus we've got the Switch. So now I'm like, oh man, maybe I can start to put together a little Superman video game collection.
Actually, yep.
Yeah, because you still have your original cartridge.
Oh yeah,
box and all.
The Death of Superman, the Kemco one for the original Nintendo, which when you look back at it now, you go, is this where Funko Pops got the idea for the big head and the little body? So, but yeah, many of them leave something to be desired, unfortunately.
Well, that's the thing. While I'm no, like I said, no video game expert, I know enough to know that Superman hasn't been particularly well served in that space. No. I will say that our pals at the All-Star Superfan podcast, one of their earliest episodes, they did a dive into Superman in video games. So if anyone's curious, you want to check that out, I'd encourage you to. Anything else about the actual Brainiac battle that you want to talk about? Because the second to last level is this aerial space battle where Superman is flying through space and ultimately battles the ship at the end, but then enters. And so the final level is Superman making his way through the ship and then ultimately battling Brainiac. I guess you were already getting at this. Not only was it true to the comics in terms of the visual representation of Milton Fine, but the fact that you had these psychokinetic blasts and Milton Fine appearing as multiples to confuse Super. You had that sort of mental attack that we had gotten used to in the comic. And then at the very end of the game, you rescue Lois and she's in her little pod in outer space and Superman's flying it back. So
Yeah, he decided not to take the Macy Warfield approach on that one. Fly her back through space, no problem.
Yeah, you gotta. Yeah, at least he keeps her in her pod for this.
Nice.
But yeah, no, this was a cool relic that I don't know that I would have investigated. I know I would not have investigated at this point in time had you not commented about it. So thank you. It was really fun to take a look at. Ties in perfectly to this discussion, and limitations of the gameplay or graphics aside. I mean, just the fact that you had elements of the current comics, specifically Metallo and the Milton Fine Brainiac, represented in the game at that time, I think is pretty cool. So like I said, we'll have way more to say on Superman and video games down the line, but for now I wanted to hit on this. All right, the very last thing, Tim, I want to thank you publicly on the show. I posted about it on social media, but over the holidays, man, you sent me the Kryptonian battle suit from the Kenner Man of Steel line of action figures. I've talked about this before. I had it as a kid and sold it along with a bunch of my stuff years and years ago. Never thought I would see it again. And what an absolute treat it was to open that up. And my son was with me and he was so excited. He could tell how excited I was. It was such a great moment. I can't thank you enough. I really, really appreciate it.
I'm really glad you liked it. And now thank you for all the stuff you do all year long. Just wanted to make sure you had a super holiday.
Well, I did, and that was a part of it, and I really appreciate it. And I want to let our audience know that you are going to be joining me on the February installment of our Patreon exclusive spinoff show, Beyond Metropolis. We're going to be talking about a pair of obscure mid-90s Superman adjacent miniseries, The Guardians of Metropolis and Metropolis SCU. I'll be totally honest, I didn't know these existed. And I came across them, and we've got a whole episode about them coming out next month. So I hope people will tune in and hear us talk about them. Without further ado, here is our episode on the Kryptonian AI Brainiac. Hope you enjoy. Welcome to Digging for Kryptonite, a Superman fan journey. I'm your host, Anthony Desiato. Joining me to discuss the Kryptonian AI Brainiac in the DCAU, Smallville, My Adventures with Superman, and the Brainiac Attacks animated movie is the host of Always Hold On to Smallville, our pal, returning guest, Zach Moore. Welcome back.
I am Krypton.
God damn it, man. That's the line I was going to use.
Really?
I said, I know Zach is going to hit me with something. Yeah. And I was prepared to return it with I am Krypton. And I had this whole thing about how it's Brainiac's Vinny Chase moment on Entourage. There's this iconic line, I am Queens Boulevard. We got the Brainiac version, I am Krypton.
Sorry.
There you go. Clearly it stood out to both of us. So I love that.
Yeah.
All right. Before we dive in here, do you want to share with folks what you got going on, the ultimate season of Smallville on your podcast?
Oh, well, thank you, Anthony. Yes. We are celebrating Smallville's 10 seasons, 22 episodes a season, give or take. All right. Before anybody hits me up in the comments, I know every season of Smallville has a variable number of episodes. Thank you. But looking back, so on Always On to Smallville, we have finished our episode by episode rewatch. And now it's time for non-episode coverage, right? And we've always done Smallville specials, Superman specials, but this particular project we're doing is called Smallville, the Ultimate Season. And we are going through the first episode of every season, the second episode of every season, the third episode of every season, podcast by podcast, and with a small panel of guests, a rotating panel. You yourself are on a handful of episodes on the Ultimate Season. And we are determining what the ultimate episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. are of Smallville, and coming up with the ultimate season of Smallville, episodes 1 through 22. That's the standard. So that's the number. Don't talk to me about 23 or, it's its own thing. It's always this episode number things with Smallville, Anthony, as you know, being the fan you are. But it's a lot of fun. We kind of start at the bottom and like, all right, well, that's not going to be it. That's not going to be it. And we usually in these panels, we end up debating about 2 or 3, and it's a lot of fun. And we've recorded a lot in advance, and they're coming out now. And you might be surprised what some of the ultimate episodes are. I know I was, even as the host, because I'm not the final say. We let the panel decide.
Yeah, I encourage everyone to check it out. I was honored to take part. People will hear those episodes as the season moves along, but in at least one, maybe a couple of the ones that I participated in, yeah, there were some surprising takes that really kind of set me back.
No,
so
that's
fun.
why I love the format of having a panel of people, because someone's like, well, obviously we're going to eliminate this one. I'm like, that was my pick. What are you talking about? But that just shows you like what a wide canvas Smallville has, right? Of what it offers and what appeals to people and what people connect to. And so it's so interesting to kind of look back on the show in this way. And it's a lot of fun. So if you're a Smallville fan or even have some kind of passing knowledge of Smallville, I encourage everybody to go check it out.
Yeah. And of course, like I said in my intro, Smallville had its own Brainiac, a take on the Kryptonian AI iteration, albeit one where he posed as Clark's professor, Milton Fine, and was also an agent of Zod. So there were a few different facets to the Smallville Brainiac, which we'll hit on. Now, last week, we covered the post-crisis comic book iteration of Brainiac, the Milton Fine version, the circus mentalist who is possessed by the alien mind of Kaluan scientist Vril Dox. And that was a relatively easy discussion in the sense that, with all due respect to the creators of those comics, I kind of concluded that I appreciate it for what it was. It did what it needed to do at the time. It was my first Brainiac that I ever experienced, and I'll always have a soft spot, but I can kind of leave that version of Brainiac where he is. I don't know that there's much that I would necessarily hold on to, so to speak. But now it gets more complicated because now we're here at the Kryptonian AI iteration. And it's, I think, a very fascinating take on the character. And I guess I have some conflicting feelings on it, which we'll sort out over the course of it. Let me toss it to you first. Generally speaking, like we said, we see this iteration in a few different instances, but generally speaking, where does the Kryptonian AI take on Brainiac kind of fall within your Brainiac hierarchy?
Well, this is going to be a fun conversation because to me, this is the take on Brainiac. I think this is a perfect way to reinvent the character and tie him into Superman's origin and add an extra layer of stakes between him and Brainiac as well. I believe, and correct me, Anthony, but on your Superman the Animated Series mixtapes, I think it was you and V. Kin talking about this.
Jeremy.
And as a oh, excuse me. So sorry, Jeremy. Guess you guys have similar voices. So, but he pointed out, like, it's almost like Brainiac is Superman's arch nemesis in Superman the Animated Series because he's there at the origin and he's the one that goes back in time to kill him as a kid, and he's got that personal connection to Krypton, and he knew his father. I'm like, yeah, like what a genius turn. And I think Alan Burnett ended up making this connection when he was writing the pilot, the Last Son of Krypton 3-parter for Superman the Animated Series. And was it or was it not inspired by the Joker killing the Waynes and Batman 89? I don't know, but that was what was in the water in the late 80s and 90s. That sort of, connection between a hero and a villain. And Brainiac, like, adding that layer just makes so much sense, Now, and to me, I think I'm trying to remember, like, how I first even read or watched Brainiac and anything. And I'm pretty sure it was Superman the Animated Series. So it's like, oh, well, that just makes perfect sense. And so ever since then, reinforced by Smallville, right? Reinforced by what was planned to be the sequel to Superman Returns, all the plans you hear about that, right? Reinforced now, which is crazy to think, decades later, like My Adventures with Superman. So it's like, wow, like this is hung on very tightly on some interpretations and then totally ignored in others. But it's my preferred take on Brainiac. I think that's such a strong reinterpretation of the character, and that's the one I prefer.
Okay, fair enough. And I think that's a feeling that's probably shared by a lot of people listening to this. And I'm not here to say that's wrong. It's funny because you mentioned the animated series mixtapes that I did, and that was years ago now on the podcast. But I didn't go back to re-listen to them, but I'm reasonably confident. I'm sure I'm on there saying, like, this is the best version of Brainiac.
See, listeners, listen up. As a fellow podcaster, I can tell you, like, there's things you say years ago that you have no idea, and you're just waiting for someone in the comments to say, you know what, that you contradicted yourself in episode 107. You said this, and episode 307, you said that. I'm like, look, guys, that's part of the Superman fan journey, though, isn't it, Anthony?
It is. I remember having our mutual friend Rob O'Connor from All Star Superfan on here at some point. I think when we talked about the Superman Adventures comic books. And he quoted me to me. He's like, well, you said Superman the Animated Series is like the gold standard of Superman animation. I was like, all right, I did. Sure. I mean, I don't disagree, but I didn't remember saying that. But yeah, I think even just a few years ago, I think I would have co-signed on exactly what you just said, and I would have been done. And let me also say, because in these episodes, I've really been working hard to kind of land on what I think is the best version of Brainiac. And I fully recognize it's not like James Gunn is calling me up being like, hey, I'm working on Man of Tomorrow. I don't know which direction to go in. I need your help. It's like, I know it doesn't matter. We can enjoy the different interpretations. And I do, but I don't know, for whatever reason, it really means something to me to try to sort out what I consider to be the best iteration. That's why I keep going back and forth, but it's fun. Like, I'm enjoying the process.
Well, as a Superman fan, right? Superman the Animated Series, I think, has an interesting place for us all because of our age, right? People of our age, we grew up watching Batman the Animated Series, and it's this sister show and they cross over. But as soon as you introduce that Batman with anybody else, he's infinitely cooler, infinitely better. So he ends up making Superman look like a chump, half the time. Like, I love it's in World's Finest, right? And I think Superman thanks Batman for helping him. He's like, well, I couldn't have done this without you. And Batman says, I'm aware of that. And then he leaves. Like, it's so Batman. It's so great. My point with that is Superman the Animated Series, I think, gets a bad rap because it's a good show, right? And I feel like even when I've talked about it over the years, I was like, he's so depowered and he's lame and all that. But the villains, every one of the villains is such like a perfect distillation, in my opinion, of what those villains are, right? Metallo, Mxyzptlk, Bizarro, Brainiac, right? I mean, if they nail the villains in the animated series, and it just, because these Superman villains, they're not quite as, I don't know, iconic and well defined as Batman villains. And so if I'm looking for something to latch onto, I latch onto the DCAU. And so that's another reason why I latch onto this Kryptonian Brainiac.
Yeah, no, right on. I hear you on that. I think, like I was saying before, I think this is definitely a valid take, a compelling take. And I think this whole AI interpretation, Kryptonian AI specifically, has its place. And certainly what we see across Superman the Animated Series, Justice League, and Justice League Unlimited, I think you see it work to great effect. So much so that when Mike Carlin was here a while back, he talked about how he wishes they had just done that in the comics. So I think it was a great idea. And I guess kind of on that note, I really do tip my hat to the folks involved with Superman the Animated Series, because like we talked about last time, this was an era of Superman comics where we were in Milton Fine territory. And Kal-El was squarely the sole survivor of the planet Krypton. We were not going to have a bottle city of Kandorians. So the fact that through this Kryptonian AI angle, they were able to forge this connection, and I do think this is an essential ingredient, a connection between Brainiac and Krypton. And no, it's not a bottle city, but it's an orb containing all of the information about the planet. So it serves a very similar function. So it worked great. And I think, again, especially given the parameters of the time, and this is something, I don't know, maybe the producers have talked about this, I don't know. But like, I wonder if there had been freedom, if they would have gone a more traditional route with Brainiac, if they would have done this either way, or if it was, like I said, given those parameters, this was a way to sort of achieve something that still tapped into the same themes.
Yeah, in that era of the comics, right, there's the Matrix Supergirl, the Russian Zod, Milton Fine Brainiac. It's all these strange like workarounds of iconic things. And then we get around to, I guess I would call it the Jeff Johns era or even the Jeff Loeb era, where they start bringing back, here's Supergirl, here's Brainiac, here's all the stuff we knew. And I think about how there was interesting, like, what's the alignment here between what's happening in the movies, and there were no movies. So they had a lot more freedom. Like Batman the Animated Series, they had to look, this is like the Penguin's got to look like Danny DeVito. That's just how it is, right? And then when they got to have more creative control, they changed that, right? But Superman the Animated Series didn't have those limitations of like, you got to match up with the movies. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's really clever too how, I mean, almost you look at Superman the movie, right? The prologue of that, they set up Zod, and then Zod comes back and he's a villain in Superman 2. And in Superman the Animated Series, in the prologue, they set up Brainiac. And then Brainiac, he doesn't play a factor in even the 3-parter. He's like in a random episode, in the middle of the first season somewhere. And then he comes back and comes back and comes back. But that's so smart to set that up, right? And to make Jor-El and him have this like relationship, which is so interesting. And then, Brainiac's comparing, he's like, you are your father's son, Kal-El, and all that. So when he's talking to him, like, that's powerful stuff. And the fact that he's just like, you guys have talked about it. Like when they introduced Brainiac in the comics, he's just an emotional alien guy, and then they make him a computer over time. But from the jump, this Brainiac is so defined as like this calculating, like knowledge is information. I can't waste my time trying to save you, but I'm going to save myself and keep your knowledge. I mean, that's so like, it speaks to where we are today with AI. You know, that's another thing about him being just this artificial intelligence. Like, that's scary stuff. And that's a universal thing that we can relate to more today than they could 30 years ago when they even came up with this idea.
Yeah, I mean, I do feel like that has to be another argument in favor of this interpretation is how timely it is. And like you said, way more so now, given what we're currently living through. You hit on this a little bit before, and we were also messaging about this, is that despite the fact that, like we're saying, I think for a lot of people, a lot of people do gravitate towards this interpretation of Brainiac, yet it hasn't popped up everywhere. I wouldn't necessarily say it's stuck. Although something like My Adventures with Superman makes me kind of question that a little bit, because that's so recent and so long after the DCAU that it's like, oh, I don't know. It maybe is having a little bit of a resurgence. I guess when we see the ultimate take in Man of Tomorrow, maybe that will give us a little bit more of an answer. But I feel like you mentioned Jeff Johns. I feel like that has a lot to do with it, because I feel like that post-Infinite Crisis take on the one true Brainiac that I've been mentioning, and we're going to talk about more next week, I feel like that really reset and recentered the character and provided kind of a path forward for Brainiac. And I can't help but think if Johns had leaned into the Kryptonian AI version, that would have further solidified this animated take and the Smallville take. But because it's Jeff Johns and he was this architect for so long, I feel like that would have been the thing at this point.
Yeah, it's interesting that the crossover of him in this is Smallville, is in Legion, when he brings the Legion in and they do their thing with Brainiac, and go check it out. It's a great episode of Smallville, everybody. But that he is who in live action where we see the orbs for the first time, right? On that episode of Smallville, right? And that's from the animated series, and it's a Kryptonian Brainiac they're fighting. And obviously he never incorporates that into his comic thing, because his comic thing was looking back and making all this stuff make sense. That's his specialty, right? The Green Lantern Corps, the probes of Brainiac, and really just squint your eyes and you can kind of make it work, right? I don't know if that really tracks if you really issue by issue look at it, but that's what's fun about him and that knowledge and love of those older comics, trying to make them fit into what he wants to tell. And yeah, it had, I mentioned it briefly earlier, had the Superman Returns sequel happen, and they had tied Brainiac into that Donner verse, right? That would have, well, first of all, would have been the first live action version of Brainiac we saw, but also I think cemented that, because these pop culture interpretations, you ask people on the street, probably before The Dark Knight came out, okay? You ask people on the street, hey, the Joker, did he kill Batman's parents? Oh yeah, I saw it in the movie, right? So is Brainiac from Krypton? Oh yeah, I saw it in the movie, right? And I don't think in Superman Lives he was going to be from Krypton. I think he was just going to be an alien. I don't recall off the top of my head, but anyway, like, so as you've talked about, as we're all talking about now with the news of Brainiac coming in Man of Tomorrow, so close to getting him in a movie, in a live action movie. We'll talk about an animated movie in a bit, but so close to getting him in a live action movie. And that, whatever that interpretation would have been, probably would have been the pop culture based understanding of the character.
Yeah, absolutely. I think looking at sort of the pluses and minuses of this, I think, like we've already said, the timeliness of the AI angle, there's a lot to be said for that. The connection to Krypton. So we don't have the abduction of Kandor, but we have the fact that he was a product of Krypton, and specifically in the DCAU version, although we get elements of this in all three of these instances, but a product of Krypton, and in Superman the Animated Series specifically, actively stymies Jor-El's attempts to convey this information about the planet's impending doom. So he's not the, I guess, direct cause, but he prevents the planet from being saved. So you have that, and he's the possessor of all of the remaining knowledge of the planet. So you forge that connection between Brainiac and Krypton, which is great. This AI, obviously, by nature, is cold and calculating, and I keep coming back to that with Brainiac. I do feel like that is core to the character. And when we look at the initial Silver Age iteration where he's the evil space alien, and we look at the Milton Fine version where they're more maniacal, it just doesn't play right to me. So just baked in by design, you get that cold, calculating nature. So that works for me as well. I think like that's another huge plus here. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think whenever you have any villains who have a different, just totally different mindset or worldview, that makes sense to them but doesn't make sense to you. That's interesting because it's not like what he's about revenge or whatever kind of generic motivation. It's so interesting when he's like, oh yeah, well, knowledge is important. I'm going to wipe out all knowledge because then the knowledge I do have is more valuable. And like, that's such a fascinating motivation for a villain.
And on that note, that's the other thing here is that this type of Brainiac, he does have that motive. He has this purpose that he is this collector and sole possessor of data, of information. Again, I really don't mean to keep beating up on like the Milton Fine version, but his whole thing was just conquest and revenge. And it's just not as interesting. It's not like you can't have good stories, and we had fun with those stories, but there's just more meat on the bone when the character is kind of about something and something that's so specific. So, like, I mean, I really think there are a lot of positives. There are, however, a couple of hurdles that I don't know that the Kryptonian AI Brainiac clears for me. And
let's hear it. That's interesting.
Yeah, mileage will vary. Well, the first one, I'll actually start in a place where I'm not entirely sure where I land on this. I think I know, but I'm still kind of wrestling with this a little bit. Do you like a version of Brainiac who starts as an actual alien human, so to speak, right? That there's actually an organic being. He might become a cyborg or get cybernetic enhancements as he moves forward, but that there is a human sort of starting point.
No, I don't think that's necessary because he is a artificial intelligence. He is a robot. Like, how many villains does Superman have who are aliens? And you have cyborg Superman for that. You have all kinds of like robots and things like this. Him coming just from being a computer who achieves sentience or is created with it and then evolves to this next level and is always looking to evolve to this next level is so interesting. So that's such a unique, interesting angle that other villains cannot provide.
I know. And that's why I wrestle with this. No, like, that's the thing. And this is where I go back and forth on that because there is a part of me. I keep citing House of Brainiac, a relatively recent story, but there you have his son and wife, his original family, come face to face with him again. And I don't know, I feel like there's something there. I don't know if it's the Smallville Lex Luthor fan in me, always looking for like the possibility of redemption. But I don't even know that it's, I don't even know that it's that. I don't know that it's even that I want redemption for Brainiac. I guess I just kind of I think it might be that I like the character to have had more of a journey, some sort of evolution, as opposed to he's created, he's the AI, and there's that. Although his programming can evolve. Like you can take him in different directions. And maybe there's an argument to be said, like, this is a more formidable villain because there is no possibility of redemption. I mean, short of reprogramming, I suppose. But you know what I mean?
Brainiac 5 and all that reprogramming. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think, we're in this era of villainy and an anti-hero where like every villain's like an anti-hero and there's redemption. Like, you know what? Sometimes it's nice to have villains who are just villains and they can be destroyed and defeated, and they can be layered and interesting, where they can be evil and there's no light at the end of the tunnel, right? And the loophole of this is, like you said, we reprogrammed him in the future, and look at the Terminator movies, right? The Terminator, ruthless killing machine. Terminator 2, reprogrammed, one of the best action heroes of all time. So that's a lane, and then the comics again. We've said it how many times now? Brainiac 5. That's your angle. That's your redemption for him. I don't need like Prime Brainiac or Brainiac 13 or whatever number or whatever he's going to be to have a redemption arc. But I do think that's untapped potential. Like again, I'm going to say it again. This is my take a shot every time I mention this in this conversation, guys. But the Superman Returns sequel, right? Part of the idea for that was Brainiac had evolved as far as he could evolve, and he needed a Kryptonian body, like to evolve further. And that was going to be Jason, Superman's son, right? And so that was part of the angle there. I'm like, oh, that's the journey you're looking for, I think, as the character, as opposed to just, oh yeah, so he's like, what, he wants knowledge and that's it. Like, there's an actual like emotional element or motivation, maybe. So maybe had that movie come out, that would have sold you on this Brainiac. That's my thought. That's
interesting. Yeah, maybe something like that. I mean, it's funny. Like literally, as of this recording, I have not watched all of the most recent season of Harley Quinn, of all the things, but Harley Quinn, they did a whole take on Brainiac.
Really?
And there's this,
I didn't know that.
And one of the episodes is called Breaking Brainiac. And it's this whole backstory. And that I have seen, though it's been a while. I need to rewatch it, but he had a family and he leaves on a mission and he comes back and the planet's been wiped out. So So that's the other thing. So if it's not that I want potential for redemption, is it that I want this tragic backstory, like a reason for why he ends up that way? I don't know. I go back and forth, but I think what you've made and that I've even acknowledged, I think there is a lot to be said for not having that. And it's so funny though that you mentioned about Superman Returns. So I'm not as well versed in what those plans were for that sequel that never happened. But so funny as you're saying that. The Twilight two-parter of the Justice League animated series where Brainiac teams up with Darkseid, that was the whole thing. Brainiac had evolved as far as he could go, and he had Superman strapped up, and he was going to extract living tissue, DNA, to evolve to the next form, and it ends up not happening because Darkseid turns on him, and that's it. But that exact idea.
Yes, there it is.
My comic shop closed over a decade ago. But if there's one place where I feel that same sense of camaraderie, it's Fat Moose Comics, New Jersey's best and oldest comic book store, led by current owner Sean Hendricks. If you're looking for something and they don't have it, they can probably get it for you. They know a guy. Visit Fat Moose in Whippany, New Jersey, and be sure to reach out via the Fat Moose Comics Facebook page. I'm a parent, which means that a family-friendly comic shop is a must, and there's none better than Aw Yeah Comics. Visit one of their 3 locations, Harrison, New York, Muncie, Indiana, or Skokie, Illinois, home to our pal, Sweet Sweet Bernie. Follow them on social media and at awyeahcomics.com for news about signings, live sales, and much more. Their name says exactly how they feel about it. Say it with me now. Aw yeah. As a movie lover and independent filmmaker myself, I appreciate the importance of great, well-run film festivals, and one family of fests has you covered in New York and New Jersey. Don't miss Hang On to Your Shorts in Asbury Park, Brightside Tavern in Jersey City, Round Reel in Bloomfield, and Shorts and Stout in Long Beach. Event details, as well as submission information for filmmakers, can be found at filmfreeway.com. We love digging into epic comic book runs, but what about the art of the single issue? Single Bound is a podcast series hosted by married couple Amy and Logan as they review single issues of comics, many of them starring the Man of Steel, Logan's favorite character. Listen and subscribe on Spotify and YouTube, and follow the show on Instagram at Single Bound Podcast. Ever wonder what would happen if a person who knew barely anything about comics decided to absorb hundreds of Superman stories from all eras and media? That's exactly what Robbo is doing on This Podcast Will Never Die, which starts with all the ways the Man of Steel stood out on the newsstands in 1938. Listen and subscribe to This Podcast Will Never Die, and you'll never look at Superman's trunks the same way again. Yeah. So
I don't think Brainiac, it's not like no one has this has to be it. And if it's not this, I don't like it. Like there are a lot of characters out there that are that way, but I don't think Brainiac is one of those characters.
Yeah. And I know I take a shot every time I say he should be cold and calculating, but if that is the most kind of foundational aspect of this, that hand in hand with a connection to Krypton, both of those are achieved, whether it's the Jeff Johns, One True Brainiac, Kaluan side of the character or the Kryptonian ally, like those are both there. So thematically, you're still tapping into the same thing.
Also, I think, and this ties into Smallville, there's a Krypton fatigue, probably. You might feel it. I know I feel it.
That's next on my list.
Here it is. Okay, so this is some common ground on this here. Like, every villain, every obstacle, everything he faces cannot be from Krypton, right? Doomsday itself is like, okay, I don't know. That's a retcon, but it kind of works. I don't know. That's a big asterisk on that one. But I'm cool with it, but you hear what I'm saying about Doomsday, I think it works in Superman the Animated Series having Brainiac come from Krypton because there's no Zod, Ursa. Like, yes, there's Jax-Ur and Mala, but they're like in a 2-parter way later, and they're not the big Kryptonian villains who come to Earth and take over and that sort of thing. Brainiac feels that role of his past catching up with him. Like, every version of Superman needs that to happen at some point, right? And Brainiac fills that function in the DCAU more so than, anybody from the Phantom Zone. You get more than that, it starts to get repetitive. I totally understand why Smallville did it because it's this easy in, right, of like aliens from Krypton and monsters or whatever, right? They did it for like the last, 3 seasons. Well, Darkseid wasn't Krypton. Give him credit there, season 10. Thanks. But that does get old after a while, right? You want a variety of origins for these villains, and then you are Clark from Smallville being like, man, this is all my fault. Like I brought kryptonite, I brought these aliens, it's totally, none of this would be here if not for me. And so that is a little much if there are Kryptonians from the Phantom Zone, if there are monsters, and then Brainiac is also from Krypton. That's a little much. I'll give you that.
That's the thing. I mean, if anything, I'm most forgiving towards Smallville. Big surprise, because and we've talked about this so much. Obviously, you covered it in great depth. But like the antagonistic relationship between Clark and Krypton on that show, and what that represented. So the fact that we had in the form of Brainiac yet another source of that tension, I think worked well enough in that context. Generally speaking, though, yeah, that's maybe the biggest problem that I have is yet another threat emanating from Krypton. Hand in hand with that, I feel like Brainiac being from Krypton just takes away from these other villains we already have. We have Zod. We have the Phantom Zone generally. We have the Eradicator. We have Zor-El, depending on the interpretation.
Yeah.
And that's where I really bumped up against the My Adventures with Superman take. I love the design of that Brainiac. I love Michael Emerson's vocal performance. But there you have a Brainiac who has raised Supergirl like his daughter, who is bent on conquest, and who is this artificial intelligence. And I just feel like we took Zod and Zor-El and Brainiac and like smushed them together into one character. And I really have and I feel like that just highlights the problem with this Brainiac.
Do you know any behind the scenes stuff about My Adventures with Superman? Because I do not. Because I feel like that was a retcon. I feel like the tease at the end of season 1 was absolutely Brainiac and Zod, and somebody said, you know what? What if we did Supergirl instead? Right? Do you feel that? You know,
I think there could be something to that. Like I don't know. I haven't come across anything, but if that were the case, I wouldn't be surprised.
Because because who we find out later is Supergirl. She says everyone will kneel. I was like, oh well, that's Zod, and they're like, let's do Supergirl instead. But interestingly, another unmade Superman movie, the Unmade Superman 3 from the Ilya Salkind original version. Brainiac finds Supergirl, raises her, gets kind of weird and incestuous. Not going to go into that, but you know, he raises her, then he's in love with her. Really weird. Not cold and calculated, Anthony. We don't like that. But this idea of Brainiac scooping up Kara and using her for his own purposes is interesting. Does he need to be from Krypton? No. That is so interesting now, because we were talking about it briefly before we started. Like, Superman the Animated Series comes out like 96 to 99. Smallville comes out in 2001. Brainiac doesn't come along to 2005. Ends in 2011. You know, Brainiac's in the 10th season, so we'll count his era there. That's it for Brainiac being from Krypton. And then for 15 years later, they're like, you know what? You know what's a great idea? Let's make Brainiac from Krypton again. I don't mind. Again, that's my preferred Brainiac, but that is interesting that was their play for that when it hadn't been in anything else for so long.
And yes, 100%. And especially since that I'm referring to as the one true Brainiac that Jeff Johns reintroduced, otherwise has generally persisted across time and media since then, more or less.
Even on, Anthony, the TV show Krypton.
Yes.
Where he is iconic. We talked about it on this podcast. Like, what an amazing... All other live action versions of Brainiac will be held up to that Brainiac in comparison. He's not from Krypton in that show. Show's called Krypton. Brainiac's not from Krypton.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, my God, the Harley Quinn animated series is from Kolu. No, I do wonder what went on with My Adventures with Superman, because you're right. Absent that, we really could put the Kryptonian AI Brainiac in a very kind of specific box. But My Adventures with Superman just busted it wide open,
keeping it alive.
And has Superman kneeling before this Brainiac. So it's just weird to me that they fused together elements from multiple different characters. It feels like a curious choice, and not one that I'm especially a fan of, even though, like I said, I like the design, I like the vocal performance. It's definitely an intimidating, eerie interpretation of the character, but like, it's just weird. And so if and when we veer into that territory, that's the hurdle I can't clear, because I just feel like, and I guess maybe the character I'm most protective of is Zod. I really feel like that kind of take on Zod really just takes space away that could have gone to Zod. And if you have the quote unquote more traditional Brainiac, not only do you have a place for Zod, you have a whole dynamic between Zod and Brainiac that's its own thing,
which exists on the TV show Krypton, by the way. So go check it out, everybody.
Yeah.
that is interesting. And then, circling back around to Smallville, like, I don't think Smallville like really ever thought, I mean, look, we love Smallville, right? But they never really thought through Brainiac's connection to Zod, really. Because he's like, it's like, did he create Brainiac? No, Jor-El did. No, Jimmy Olsen from the Superman movies did. Mark
McClure, he
Mark
played.
McClure, thank you.
Yeah, Daxor, right?
Daxor, right? Yeah, Daxor created him. I'm like that, but you said Jor-El created him, so there's the whole that's going on. For some reason, Brainiac serves Zod. Like, I've opened the portal for Zod. It's just a fun line that I've quoted over the years. It's absurd at the end of season 5. He's so excited to finally get Zod out of the Phantom Zone. Like, it's so strange. Like, that's his motivation until Jeff Johns comes in season 8. It's like, no. I don't know what you guys are doing, but Brainiac does this, So that's so strange. And they never really connected those dots properly. Even those flashbacks to Krypton with young Zod and then Zor-El, like, it's a very scattershot. I mean, they're making up as they go along because they didn't know they were going to go 10 years. Okay, so it's okay. I understand. But they never really made sense. Like, what is his objective? Was to release Zod from the Phantom Zone. And when he does that on Smallville, he disappears. He's done. So strange.
Yeah, that was one of the main things that I wanted to ask you about because that is in the realm of Brainiac, and specifically Brainiac as Kryptonian AI. Him being an agent of Zod is wholly distinct to Smallville. Like, it is a very specific angle that they take. And it is also the only angle that thus far, maybe we'll see as we move forward, where you have the AI version and the human persona in the form of Milton Fine. So they folded that in as well.
Yeah.
Were you a fan of that?
That is something, no, honestly, like, I think as Brainiac went on Smallville, now James Marsters is great, right? I think turning him into a T-1000 is smart budget-wise. I mean, that's what he is, right? He's a artificial intelligence that can kill you with knife hands and shape-shift. I mean, what are we doing here, Smallville? Smart though, right? But why did he have to be from Krypton? Like, he could have been his own alien with his own agenda, and they would just have to change. I'm here to release Zod from the Phantom Zone, I guess. But they were heavy on Kryptonian stuff in season 5. They built a fortress. So, like, I get why they did that. But I agree with the conflating of villains and plans. Like, I kind of want them to be more distinct, So I think if you're going to have the AI from Krypton, you don't have him working for Zod. He has his own agenda, just independent agenda. And so, and Smallville went on. They eventually got where they should have gone, in my opinion. But it's just a strange thing. I do like his connection to Kara, started in season 7, because again, Smallville taking these things from the comics, like, hey, Lex Luthor and Kara and the Matrix and Supergirl, totally cool. Give them some stuff. Brainiac and Kara, obviously Brainiac 5 in the future, right? In the comics, give them some stuff, right? But they never really, I don't know if they could or they just didn't know how to do it. They never really followed through on a lot of these ideas they started to present. Because I'm all for look, Smallville 150th episode Apocalypse. Brainiac goes back in time to kill Superman as a baby, right? So, hey, Terminator again, everybody. But also animated series, right? He goes back in time to Smallville, right, to kill him when he's a kid. So that's interesting, but they just never, I don't know. They could have done, Brainiac is so tough to do on a TV budget, especially on the CW in 2000, fill in the blank, 7 or whatever. And they did the best they could, I think. And I enjoyed him as a villain. He's one of the best villains on the show. James Marsters has a great performance. I love initially when he is trying to break up Clark and Lex's friendship, which is already falling apart. But he's in these college classes, he's like, Mr. Kent, you're friends with Lex Luthor. Luthor Corp is poisoning our world. What do you think about that? And all that sorts of things. And then when he's trying to lie to Clark about everything he says to Clark about Jor-El is about Zod, or vice versa,
Mm-hmm.
I love one of the lines that always stuck out to me where he's like, he made sure that his son survived, and he's mad about that. And that shows some not that cold and calculating, right? I guess that is one thing. Like James Marsters, I like the edge he has to his performance, but he never he comes across as the smartest guy in the room, and he knows it, and he enjoys that he is, and you're not, but he never comes across as like a computer. I don't know if I want that from him, but I never get that from him.
Yeah, it's a very fascinating take. I agree with a lot of the same thoughts that I've had over the years. I think generally I would say I'm a fan of the Smallville Brainiac in large part due to James Marsters. Big fan of him on Buffy and Angel. Enjoyed his performances generally, and I just really liked him in this role, and I think that went a long way. I think him posing as Milton Fine, I on record, I'll reiterate this. I just wish they had slow played that. I wish we had gotten more of that. I feel like that could have been, and I feel like if you didn't have the end of the season 5 premiere where you see him form from the liquid of the ship,
yep,
maybe it would have been a little bit more of a mystery. Like if his name is Milton Fine, we figure something's up with him, but maybe we wouldn't know for sure. Like I feel like they could have let that play out longer.
Maybe he hasn't been possessed by Brainiac yet. Those would be the discussion we would have on the message boards back in the day. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's far and away a better take on, if we're doing Milton Fine specifically, Clark's professor is worlds better than Circus Mentalist. And you
100%.
have another personal connection. So that I like. It's funny that you bring up though about just his demeanor, his characterization. Yeah. Between the writing and especially the performance, I feel like he walked that line just right. Cause I like him cold and he is cold, but there is a dark humor that will come out from him from time to time. Like there's a bit more personality than I think we would see in the traditional cold calculating Brainiac, but it's not over the top. Like it just walks the line. And honestly, if we're going back to Silver Age where we got this retcon that Brainiac is actually a robot in humanoid form, but was programmed to mimic human behavior, right, to make this retcon work. But if we kind of have that in mind, it's like, okay, this is part of his camouflage, his programming to blend in. So it works.
When he has his brief team up with Bizarro.
Yeah.
And Bizarro's like, when I go into the sun, the yellow sun turns my skin to stone. He's like, perhaps some sunscreen or a wide brim hat. Like, hilarious.
Yes, exactly. And like I said, maybe not what I would typically attribute to Brainiac, but I feel like it worked in that context. I'm with you 100%. I don't want Brainiac to be serving someone else. I feel like his actions, his motivations, everything about him should be independent. So tying him to Zod the way that Smallville did, making him an agent of Zod, and not my favorite. When he comes back in season 7, then he's more of an independent agent. And then, like we were saying, in season 8, the Jeff Johns written Legion episode, when Brainiac is possessing Chloe, now it's all about absorb all of the information of Earth and then have Doomsday destroy it. Absorb and destroy. It's like, okay, boom. Like we're in classic. Thanks, Jeff. Like classic Brainiac.
We got there.
We got there. Yeah.
Doomsday is coming. One of Smallville's classic lines from Brainiac.
Yeah. So like I said, biggest problem, it's yet another villain from Krypton, takes away from characters like Zod in particular, but also arguably a character like Eradicator who is essentially serves a very similar function in terms of being this artificial device or program that's sole focus is the preservation of the Kryptonian ways and race. So
there's a lot of overlap there, which that's why the Eradicator, like, what do they even do with him now? Right. I mean, he had that one function, that one story. And I mean, I know they've tried to kind of weave him into things here and there, but it's not the same, because too much real estate's taken up by other characters like Brainiac now. Yeah,
it's tough. And then the last thing that I do wrestle with, although this can be an issue with even the traditional Brainiac as well, I'm not a fan of takes on the origin story where someone is responsible for the destruction of Krypton.
Yes.
Now, when we get to the Jeff Johns, Gary Frank storyline, Brainiac post-Infinite Crisis, where it's the Coluan Brainiac, the whole thing there is he bottles these cities and then he fires this device into the planet's sun and causes the destruction of the planet. And that story, it never explicitly confirms, like Brainiac 100% is responsible for the destruction of Krypton, but it's a question that Superman asks. And thus, it's a question that we, the audience, are called upon to ask. There's enough ambiguity there where I can live in that and I'm okay. And something like Superman, the animated series, I'm totally fine with. He's preventing Jor-El's data from being accessed and understood and acted upon.
Jor-El is mistaken. Yeah,
exactly. And I'm okay with that. That's a fairly active role, but it's in blocking it. It's not like he actually caused the chain reaction in the planet's core. But I keep beating up on poor My Adventures with Superman, but there... he's like, he full on destroys the planet. And I don't like that. So that's another problem that I run into with this iteration.
Yeah, the ambiguity of, the sun was going to go supernova anyway, and that's why he came here, because he knew that, I better get this city before it blows up. Like, I like that ambiguity. Like, it makes Superman, like, never really sure. Don't tell us either. Just leave it out there hanging out. totally. Well, it's like Smallville, where it's like Zod destroyed Krypton. I'm like, what are you talking about? Zod destroyed Krypton? I don't like that either. I totally agree. It kind of takes away the whole lessons to learn, right? From the destruction of Krypton. Like that's some societal lessons to learn, right? When you just have somebody blow it up, right? And I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah. So, and that's the other thing with My Adventures with Superman, and not even necessarily a criticism I have, but just a thought. That show, in terms of the Kryptonian AI, they take a very specific track with that the program was formulating all of their war plans. Like it was very sort of military mind. And that's ultimately what leads to the destruction of the planet, because Jor-El is spearheading peace talks with other worlds, and Brainiac, the warmonger, can't have that. And so he triggers the destruction of the planet. But I feel like it's a little different category than, for example, Superman, the animated series, where Brainiac is more of this general AI computer system that seems to be kind of embedded in every aspect of Kryptonian life.
Well, that's what's so interesting to us today, right? How much we're depending on computers and technology, and then, blinking and miss it if you're not paying attention. I know I saw episodes of Superman the animated series kind of out of order. So like when he goes to the fortress and he's like talking to Brainiac, I'm like, whoa, what? Like he makes that his computer AI the way it was on Krypton before it was corrupt. I'm like, that's so interesting. Which shows you that it's, that's not his purpose. The Brainiac's original purpose was not any of these things we're talking about. It was just to be be your OS on your iPhone. That's all he's supposed to be on Krypton.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm enjoying talking this through because like, as I'm saying it, maybe these things aren't necessarily fatal to the Kryptonian AI debate. Certainly in terms of the destruction of the planet. Like I said, Superman the animated series gives us a take that I'm perfectly comfortable with. And yeah, as far as stepping on the toes of other characters like Zod, yeah, maybe there is a way to sort of carve out enough space for each of them. Like I said, I really just think My Adventures with Superman, I don't know. They went in a very curious direction with it.
Yeah, the timing, the approach, the thinking, and the potential retcon of it all. I'll say this though. I mean, Brainiac, in your opinion, is he Superman's number 2 villain?
Yeah.
In his rogue scholar. Okay.
Yeah.
So he's the number 2. We have is it this or is that Lex Luthor the number 1 villain? Right.
Yep.
Is he childhood friend of Clark Kent, or is he businessman that Clark Kent meets in Metropolis? Like those are two paths that they are mutually exclusive. You cannot have both. Right. And I really like them both. So we're in a similar place with Brainiac.
Okay. I think I can leave it there. I think I can accept that. Yeah, no, I think that's the case. I mean, I guess the last thing, big picture, and then we'll segue to Brainiac Attacks is there a way to really have our cake and eat it too? I mean, especially in the post Jeff Johns world where we have the one true Brainiac who can project his consciousness into all of these different probes.
I mean, there's no way to absorb continuity the way Jeff Johns does, but if you did a hard reboot and you did some sort of reveal, the way they revealed Doomsday was from Krypton. That's the only way. Like, have a computer on Krypton and you don't never hear its name, and then oh look, it's the program. It's deep in the programming. Oh my God, he's from Krypton. Like you could do that whole thing if you wanted. I wouldn't want to conflate them though. I like them being separate.
I ultimately agree, because I say to myself, like, there is a way where the AI Brainiac is a form of the true Brainiac kind of manifesting it in this way. And maybe he's using that as a way to scout planets and then beaming information back.
AI, yeah.
Right. But a part of me feels like that's a hat on a hat. And it's like, it is really trying to have your cake and eat it too. I think if it's going to be Kryptonian AI, that's one track. If it's going to be the Kaluan Brainiac, that's another. Both have value and are valid takes. All right, truly the last thing on the AI generally. I ended up having a rare free day yesterday. We're recording this on a Monday. Yesterday, my wife took our son to an activity and then a play date, and I had hours. So just for myself, I ended up rewatching virtually all of Brainiac's DCAU appearances.
Oh, okay.
And it sounds like a lot, but I guess this is the reason I bring it up. He's not in as much as I, at least, I think often think of. So certainly The Last Son of Krypton Part 1, and then he makes a little cameo at the end of Part 3 where you find out he's still out there. He kills those aliens. Stolen Memories, big episode, right, where he shows up, presents himself as an ally to Lex and Superman. Turns out not to be the case. Superman gets away with the orb containing the information. And yeah, to your point, I mean, he brings that to his Arctic hideaway. And then whenever he accesses it, we hear the voice of Brainiac really just functioning in that.
Corey Burton, by the way. We shouted out Michael Emerson a few times. He's great, obviously, but Corey Burton, A, plus voice actor. I know that obviously they're doing a little technological filter on him, right? But we'll get into this soon. He is so iconically the voice of this Brainiac.
100%. It's not the same continuity, but the Legion of Superheroes animated series, they do play around with the Prime original Brainiac, and they bring Corey Burton back for it, and he's fantastic. Then we get Ghost in the Machine when Brainiac forces Lex to build him a new body. This is important because we'll find out deep into Justice League Unlimited, this is where Brainiac planted a copy of his programming within Lex and uses that to take over Lex at the climax of the Cadmus arc.
Amazing retcon. Just A+ retcon game. That's how you do it, Smallville, with your Veritas windows. Okay, that's how you do it right there.
Yeah, man, it worked perfectly. And then a couple of final quick appearances in Nighttime, classic episode, but he's the surprise villain where he's been controlling Bruce Wayne with nanites to build a rocket to escape Earth. New Kids in Town, you mentioned this before, the Legion episode where he goes back in time. Then I had mentioned that season 2 Justice League two-parter Twilight, where he aligns with Darkseid, at least temporarily.
And he has a skull ship of his own a little bit.
Yeah, he's got that, I don't know, planetoid Asteroid, that's in the shape of his head. Yep, and then it blows up. And then the climax of Justice League Unlimited, the Cadmus arc, where he emerges from within Lex and they form this combined being, which mileage may vary on that. How do you feel about that, like, literal merging of the two of them?
It's kind of weird, especially how Lex is like wants to, like, I want to be a god again, right? That's his whole motivation after that. I get it. It's kind of weird, but I guess it's supposed to be kind of weird. So, I mean, it works.
Yeah. Brainiac also appeared, I think, on a couple episodes of Static Shock, but I did not have access to those episodes, but noted here for anyone, so you don't have to write in. I know Static Shock there too.
That, Brainiac, I mean, you're right. I would have thought he would have been in more. His presence is so just casts a long shadow because he's there from the first Superman episode to the end of Justice League, So he is part of the DCAU. He's part of the foundational elements of the DCAU, especially because they invented this interpretation of the character. So thanks for reading those off. That's interesting. I would have, if I would have been wrong, if I would have guessed, I don't know, like 12 episodes or something, but not that many, but quality over quantity, Anthony.
100%. So a great take on Brainiac at a time where the comic book side maybe left a little bit to be desired. It worked fantastic in this context. Smallville put its own spin. My Adventures came back more recently with another take on it. Not my favorite, but overall, a lot to be said for the Kryptonian AI Brainiac. Now, there is one other instance.
There's the one true Brainiac.
And well, we segue now to Superman Brainiac Attacks, the 2006 animated film. And we've been messaging about this. I think we were in a similar boat where for 20 years, this had escaped our sight. We knew about it, but we had, I guess, made a fairly conscious choice not to watch. The headline here, and I imagine even if folks haven't actually watched it, if they know one thing about it, they know this. And if you don't know anything, this is, I think the thing that you should know is that the movie utilizes the character designs and animation style of Superman the Animated Series. And some of the voice cast, Tim Daly returns, Dana Delany returns, our voice actors for Perry, Jimmy, Ma, and Pa all return. However, it is not set within the continuity of Superman the Animated Series, and they recast Brainiac and Lex and Mercy and completely change the characterization of Lex Luthor, making for a pretty jarring viewing experience, especially for us fans of the animated series. Yes?
Yes. On its own. It's hard to even judge this on its own because it's wearing the skin of this other thing, and it's not this other thing, and it's such a strange choice, and I don't know why they did this, and I feel like it would be less infamous if it were just some random animated movie that came out and like, oh, that was weird, whatever, okay, and then you move on. As opposed to like, oh, look, Batman, the animated series, got some animated movies. Now Superman, the animated series, 10 years later, for some reason, is getting an animated movie. And wow. Its reputation preceded it for us.
Do you remember making a conscious choice not to watch? Like, do you remember when it came out? Do you remember what you were thinking?
I don't remember exactly because a year later Superman Doomsday came out and that was a big deal, right? Hey, the DC animated universe is starting our first direct-to-video animated movie. Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. And so I remember that was a big deal. right? You go out, you get that, you watch it, and that started off a whole series of one-off animated movies that some connected, some not, most not connected. But I think that whole wave of those movies is what kind of buried Brainiac Attacks.
I ultimately, I guess, kind of came to the same conclusion when I was thinking about this, because I was really racking my brain. I'm like, what? Because there was initially, when I was thinking about this and the timing, I said, well, maybe I was just in college at this point. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there was never a time where I was like, I don't watch cartoons anymore. But maybe it just, I felt like, oh, maybe it wasn't on my radar as much. But then I went through the same process you did, and I'm like, no, Superman Doomsday was the very next year, and I was chomping at the bit for that to come out.
And Justice League Unlimited, had just ended. So
I was still watching these kinds of animated projects.
Yeah.
The only thing I can think of, and I honestly don't have a specific memory. I can't remember, but my best guess is that I just heard about this through reviews and discussion at the comic shop and wrote it off. I think that's the likeliest scenario, is that I just heard it was terrible, and I didn't have a podcast then. So why would I have watched it?
Well, I have never watched this either until this. And my best friend Lance Laster from Always Holding the Arrow, and he's been your guest a few times as well. I was gifted this from him 10 years ago now. I saw it and I never opened it, because shortly thereafter I started Always on the Small. I'm like, oh, I know. We'll save this and, like, I don't know, do something with it at some point. And because it's this infamous thing in the fandom, and it's unique that I haven't seen it, And then you asked me, not too long ago to do this. I'm like, I still haven't seen this. And Lance and I were hanging out for New Year's Eve, actually. My wife was out of town. And I was like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to watch Brainiac Attacks. And being the best friend he was down for it. And we watched it. And I have thoughts.
Yes. And by the way, so I reached out to you because I knew you had, I remember you posting a photo of yourself with it. And the gist of it was like, one day, like, we'll get to this. So that was actually, I reached out to you because I don't want to step on any toes. I'm like, right. If you're planning, my feeling was like, if for some reason, like, you were planning to do something now, it's like, well, I wouldn't have done this, or I don't know. Yeah. But so I wanted to check in with you, and I'm glad it worked out. You had that experience. That. You recorded something with Lance as well?
No, we did not. We just absorbed it as viewers, as an audience member. Sometimes it's nice, it depends on what you're watching, but it's nice to just watch something and not go over a podcast about it for your own purposes anyway. So no, we didn't do a commentary. We didn't do a special episode or anything. These are my thoughts here for the first time on microphone with you here on Digging for Kryptonite.
All right. That's
how much I respect your show, Anthony.
I listen, man, I'm honored. The one thing I'll say before I toss the ball to you, knowing what I was getting going in made all the difference in the world. I think if I were watching this when it originally came out, and it came out right at the same time as Superman Returns, I think that was the idea with this, was that it was going to be this marketing tie-in with Superman Returns. And from the little bit I was able to find online, Warner Brothers specifically wanted the classic look of Superman the Animated Series. They wanted that look, but they also wanted more humor, and they wanted these other changes in the character. It's very curious choices that we'll talk about. But I think if I had gone in 2006 or in the year since, but without knowing the full picture of this, I think I would have had an exceedingly difficult time, because I would have been expecting an extended episode of Superman the Animated Series. And this is not that. So I think going in, knowing what I was getting, it's weird and all of that. But at the same time, I didn't dislike it as much as I guess I'd always feared all of these years. What was your experience?
It's not the worst thing ever. And as you just said, I totally understand if you're watching this in 2006, expecting Superman the Animated Series, the movie. Like, here's the thing, right? I mentioned Batman the Animated Series earlier. Batman the Animated Series gets Mask of the Phantasm. Superman the Animated Series basically gets Brainiac Attacks. And I know it's not supposed to connect, but I mean, to anyone with any just more surface knowledge of any of this, like, it's right on the shelf next to the other ones, and it looks just like it. So it's connected. Let's be real about this, right? But when it started out with, like, on this white text on a black background, Warner Brothers Presents, I literally said out loud, there's no art design of these opening credits. I'm like, oh wow, they really cheaped out on this. Again, compare that to Mask of the Phantasm's opening credits. I recommend everybody go watch those opening credits. They're incredible. This is like, you could have done this on PowerPoint in 1996, you know? Now, there is a little bit more to it. You see like a meteorite or something, so it doesn't stay that way, but I was like, okay, I see what we're in for here. But I will say there are certain things I actually thought, oh, I enjoyed that more than I thought. I didn't expect certain things, which I'm sure we'll talk about here, that we did get in this movie. But man, it is crippled. It is crippled by the characterization and performances of Brainiac and Lex Luthor.
Yes, I can actually live with Brainiac. Far from my favorite, but I can live with it. And just so everyone knows, so we had Lance Henriksen taking over from Corey Burton as Brainiac.
Which Lance Henriksen, you know, from Aliens, right? He plays an android. He was in the Terminator, who's actually James Cameron's original choice when he was like creating the Terminator. There's art from James Cameron, who was a Hollywood artist before he was a director, of this actor as a cyborg. So I'm like, oh, the genre actor makes a lot of sense. He's famous from the Millennium TV show, which ties in the X-Files. And by the way, everybody, he was on an episode of DC's Legends of Tomorrow as Obsidian, by the way. So he's in live action on a TV show. Go check him out. So in theory, if I was casting from scratch, cool choice. But how dare you replace Corey Burton?
Yeah, it's wild. But so that's who we have as Brainiac, and Powers Booth as Lex Luthor. Now, this breaks my heart. I mean, Powers Booth, long career. He did a ton of stuff. And in the DC animated space, he was the voice of Gorilla Grodd, right?
Yeah. Like a year ago on Justice League Unlimited.
And he is capable of a great vocal performance. But unfortunately here, it's hampered by the characterization that is written for Lex. I mean, I think that's what ultimately saves the Brainiac side of things, is that he's generally operating the way we're kind of accustomed to. But how would you describe this? I mean, clearly they had the Gene Hackman iteration in mind. Yeah. It's like someone's pop culture memory of the Gene Hackman interpretation, right? It's like, oh, he was like a goofy guy, right? I'm like, okay, well, sometimes like he was flamboyant, but he was also very sinister. And if you, like, I think that's why it's like they remembered Otis as Lex Luthor instead of Lex Luthor, right? He's just very just buffoonish and silly and unfortunate, because you're absolutely right. Powers Booth, great actor, great voice actor. Could it, again, casting from scratch? Absolutely. I would, if they cast him as Lex Luthor, I said, oh, that's interesting. Can't wait to hear it. But not these writing, and not whatever directorial notes he got were way off from what, like, how can you see the Clancy Brown Lex Luthor do these silly things and act this silly way? It cripples the movie. Yeah, that is unfortunately the fatal flaw. I mean, it's not a particularly complex plot here, but just real quick. So Brainiac attacks, living up to the title of the film, and
he does indeed,
is seemingly destroyed, but Lex retrieves a piece and gives Brainiac once again, in all of these iterations, there's an alliance between Lex and Brainiac that will go wrong. And that's true to form here as well. But he provides Brainiac the component parts to rebuild himself, including Lex's satellite. But he includes two new elements. One is a piece of Superman's DNA, which will allow the reborn Brainiac to track Superman, and a little sliver of kryptonite that allows Brainiac to, I don't know, how would you describe this? Inject a form of blood poisoning into Superman and Lois?
I guess that was the idea. That wasn't made very clear, I don't think.
Yeah. Blood poisoning, I guess, is the best descriptor I can come to. And then that leads Superman on a quest to the Phantom Zone to find a cure for himself and for Lois. I think this might be what you were getting at before. There are interesting aspects to this. And for me, far and away, the emotional crux of this is that the Clark in this film is preparing to reveal his secret identity to Lois so that they can proceed, or so that he can pursue a relationship, an honest relationship with her. And even though we know intellectually that this was not Superman the Animated Series canon, you can't help but feel like you're in that territory, especially when you hear Tim Daly and Dana Delany. And so to even broach the subject of a romance between the two of them and have that conversation with Clark and his parents on the porch, I mean, it was worth it for me for that, if for nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, this is untapped potential for this show. Like they kiss once in the series finale, I think, and it's Superman and Lois. It's not even Clark and Lois, right?
Right. Yes.
And because this Clark Kent is very much the George Reeves Clark Kent from Ocean Superman, who you were intimately familiar with from your podcast, right? And again, they don't really broach on that at all on that show either, and that's fine. That's not what they're doing. That's not what we're here to do on this animated series. I get it, right? But wow, like there's that. There's also like Perry White and Jimmy Olsen like have more to do in this one movie than they had, I think, okay, maybe not Jimmy Olsen, but Perry White specifically has more to do in this one movie than the entirety of Superman the Animated Series. Like I was like, oh wow, they're here, they're in multiple scenes, they're expressing emotional concern. You know, I mean, like I like that. Like I did not expect that at all, and I appreciated that was here, Anthony.
Yeah, the Perry and Jimmy stuff, and Perry in particular, I'm like, finally. Like we get something here, and there's this business about Perry wants Clark to be the foreign correspondent, and then the back and forth on that. But you really see him feeling for Lois when she's, literally on her deathbed here, suffering from the effects of this. There's also another aspect of it. They actually got me in this movie. You know, it takes a lot these days. We consume so much of this stuff. We study it. We can predict. So I'm watching this, right? And like I said, there's this bit where Superman has to go to the Phantom Zone to retrieve the cure, and it's kind of like the fire falls that we call them, like the fiery waterfalls.
Kryptonian, yeah, the Kryptonian fire falls, yeah.
And he gets a sample of this and then heads back to Earth. And I'm watching it, and Zach, already I was thinking to myself about what I was going to say to you about that, about like. It was so easy. He was there for like 2 minutes. What the hell kind of Phantom Zone? He's warned about how
dangerous it is and to stay focused, and then nothing comes of it. Yeah.
And totally. He comes back and he uses the cure.
He did fight that one monster, though, on the way there.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. I'm like, well, they gave us the one monster, and then that was and he comes back, and he's cured himself. He comes back. He uses it on Lois. She recognizes, he's there as Superman, but she recognizes him as Clark. He acknowledges this. They have this moment, but then she starts behaving oddly, basically telling him to leave Brainiac to someone else. She even mentions Green Lantern.
Maybe that Green Lantern guy.
Right? And he realizes that something's wrong, and we find out he's still in the Phantom Zone. I guess my expectations for this movie were so low that I was like, yep, that's all they're doing for the Phantom Zone. But they actually got me. I thought that was actually pretty good.
Now, they could have maybe set that up a little better. Like the execution was a little sloppy, honestly, but you're right. I was blindsided as well. And I appreciate the fact there was another obstacle, and they did a whole labyrinth to mention Smallville again in this podcast, right? Where a phantom gets inside his mind and puts him in a scenario where it wants to keep him there and distract him. Like, okay, because the computer, again, right? What did we just talk about in the first half of this episode? How this Superman has Brainiac as an AI. He has a non-Brainiac AI he talks to, who's like, you have to stay focused. Like, I don't know. I still think it was pretty easy how he just flew in and flew out. But the fact they added that extra wrinkle, I also appreciate it. I say, good for you, movie, for keeping us guessing, keeping us on our toes there for a minute.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing with this movie. If you really focus on the Superman and supporting cast side of things, it's great. Well,
also, and they sound like themselves. I mean, I don't understand the logic of getting everybody else but Brainiac and Lex Luthor. I don't understand it.
It's the sort of thing I would be racking my brain trying to put myself in the position of a Warner's executive who was like, this is the approach we're going to take. And
Clancy Brown, the guy from Highlander, let's get somebody else in here. It's the thinking.
That's it's one of those things where they put themselves in a no-win situation, because if you're a fan of Superman the Animated Series, it is a jarring viewing experience. So, you can't imagine people are going to come away like thrilled necessarily. And if you're not a Superman the Animated Series fan, I don't know how much the box art of this would appeal to you, because you would be like, oh, it's that show I don't like, or that show I don't watch. So it's like, who are we really trying to capture here? And I don't know. They were so close to you keep your voice actors, even if they had tried to inject a little bit more humor into Lex, if they felt that was needed for some reason, because they wanted it to feel more like what Kevin Spacey was going to be doing in Superman Returns, but it was still Clancy Brown bringing that to life. Maybe that could have worked. Or if they had just utilized an entirely new voice cast and designs, but I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe budget wise, then they would have had to come up with designs and animation and all of that.
Yeah, that's got to be like, well, we got all this stuff laying around and we can reuse some elements and we don't have to just do any, research and development on this. We can just go. And then I feel like it must be some studio note also, like Brainiac looks like himself at the beginning. And then he looks like this random robot for the second half of the movie. Strange, right?
Dude, what the hell was that? I mean, we didn't hit on this explicitly, but I'll be perfectly honest. When we look at Superman the Animated Series Brainiac, it's not my all-time favorite design. Actually going back to the Legion of Superheroes animated series, when we got the OG Brainiac there, I actually thought that design was pretty cool. It was close, but more of the purple
green
and green
in there.
Yeah. So the animated series one, not my all-time favorite, but fine, and we're used to it and all of that. If we're going to change it, as they do in Brainiac Attacks for this second version, it's like, do something better. I mean, I don't even know how to describe what they gave us, like generic robot.
No, it was just, it's asymmetrical. It's got like arms that extend in. It's like one Dr. Octopus arm, and like this like dome orb and just claw feet. It just, if I showed anyone this, they would not think it was Brainiac. They would just, I don't know what, it's just generic as can be. It's like dollar store robot toy. This is what Brainiac looks like. And I'm like, oh, we can sell more toys if we redesign it. I don't think they ever saw toys for this. Like if it was successful, maybe they would have done a toy line, but no, like this is not the way. This is not the way.
Yeah, it just kind of, I guess that's what kind of broke my heart about this was I was expecting so little based on everything I'd heard and the reasons why I had avoided this for literally 20 years.
Yeah.
And then watching it is heartbreaking because there are these aspects, and specifically the moments for the supporting cast and delving into new emotional territory that the animated series either wasn't interested in or wasn't built for, or I don't know what the case was. But so there's some really intriguing aspects to this. But yeah, it's just totally bogged down by the villain side of things, and especially Lex. And I agree. I think Buffoon is he's asking Mercy to make him popcorn while he's watching Superman and Brainiac fight. I mean, it's just, and that's the thing. It's one thing to have Gene Hackman in mind, but that's Gene Hackman, right? And the different level of material, and also, and this is not to put down Powers Booth, because again, I think with the right material and direction, he could have done something, but that's kind of a very high bar to aim for, and very specific. And like what Gene Hackman does, it's a delicate balance. Mm-hmm. It's not something that you can just kind of like slap together. And I feel like that's how it comes across here.
Totally. And just some of the terminology they use, like Brainiac calling Superman son of Krypton constantly. What did we just talk about? Kryptonian AI. Is this a Kryptonian AI? I would, the way he talks to Superman, I wouldn't think so, since he calls him son of Krypton, right? Because when Brainiac shows up, it's not like his first appearance. It's like, oh, Brainiac's back.
Right.
I'm like, oh, okay. So that implies other appearances, which again ties you into the animated series. Had they made it his first appearance, that would have made it very clear that this is a new continuity, just with the same actors and voices and looks for most of the characters. But they didn't do that. So he just shows up and you just assume like, oh yeah, this is he's back again, attacking again, but they don't do that. And it's very strange. It is unfortunate because I don't know. Maybe we're being kind of contrarian here because we heard for 2 decades it was the worst thing ever, and we watched it. I'm like, well, I mean, I've seen worse. So don't get me wrong. Like, I can't recommend this movie to anyone, but we're saying that we were pleasantly surprised by some elements that if they had a little more tweak here, or tweak there, some more care and attention, this would not have been Mask of the Phantasm, but it might have been Mystery the Batwoman, to use another DCAU comparison.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing, if you're a fan of Superman the Animated Series and you want to see at least the idea of romance between Lois and Clark, this is it. I guess they go on a quasi date. There's a restaurant that Clark is sent to review, and Perry orders Lois to tag along. That's the other thing here. It's like, I'm glad that they broached the subject of romance. I do wish that we could have gotten into that a little bit more. I mean, we get, I guess, enough from Clark's perspective, especially through the conversation with Jonathan and Martha. Not so much from Lois's side, though.
Well, a couple things on that. One of the silliest lines, which says a lot about this movie, is Clark's talking to Jonathan and Martha about telling Lois a secret. It's like, I worry about if a villain found out that she knew and they use it against me and they could hurt people I care about. And Jonathan's like, well, we know you're Superman and we're fine. I'm like, dude, that is not the point. That was just a ridiculous thing to say. But it was so nice to see the kids, right, hanging out on the porch, like, in the same voice actors for them. And then also the sequence of Clark. He's like, I'm gonna tell Lois, and there's like just a little montage of him always trying to tell her, and like, I'll see you later, kid. Oh, gotta catch the story. Oh, like, keeps getting interrupted. I found that quite amusing. I enjoyed that little bit right there. So
yes, and in kind of a weird precursor to James Gunn's movie with Jimmy, there's all this business about this very attractive young lady who works at the Daily Planet who happens to wear glasses. I don't know if that's the fatal flaw in Jimmy's eyes, but she's very interested in him and he wants nothing to do with her. Like, he's constantly avoiding her. It's not that far removed from the Jimmy of the James Gunn film.
I think we unlocked it. I think James Gunn, he got put in charge of DC Studios. He said, you know what, screen me Brainiac Attacks. And he made a note, Jimmy Olsen, womanizer or whatever, and Brainiac. So those are his two notes, his takeaways from this movie. That he has the hots for Mercy.
Yeah.
In this, taking a lot of photos of her, but very similar to Superman 3 when Jimmy Olsen took a lot of pictures of Lorelei, which was Ross Webster's girlfriend. So I'm like, okay, look, did somebody watch Superman 3 before they made this? Maybe, I don't know. But again, just any sort of character for Jimmy and Perry, I was here for, because this whole show, there were a couple of Jimmy episodes and, but on the whole, totally underserved in the whole animated show, and seeing them get to have anything was a delight. And the fact that, again, it was the same voice actors too, made the whole thing. And,
we keep saying they use the same designs generally. Yes, but they took away Jimmy's mullet, which I was not sad to see that go. So I think they made a nice visual update. It was 2006.
Not 1996 anymore. So
yeah, that mullet.
I didn't catch the haircut.
So because that's, I feel like, such an iconic part of the animated series Jimmy look, that mullet, or as our pal Mike San Gregorio likes to call it, hockey hair. But either way, he had a trim there, and it worked. So
and not just the characters, right? But the sets, the sets, you know what I mean? Like the environments, right? The Daily Planet is the same. Lex's office is the same.
Yeah.
So that's why it's like you cannot, it's this straight, like you said, no win scenario for them here.
Yeah. In a world where they could have just done a Superman the Animated Series movie with all the same people and characterization, or they could have done something entirely new with a new cast and new animation and designs, they picked a third terrible option, which was a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B that ultimately, I don't know that it pleases anyone fully, which is unfortunate. There's also, like we keep saying, meant to kind of tie in with Superman Returns, which, as we've talked about so many times, was meant to be in the spirit and the world of the Donner films. And you mentioned the opening credits. So at the beginning, the title at least kind of comes on in that Superman the movie style font, right? Kind of flashing. And for a second there, I'm like, oh, we're gonna get all the credits like that? Nope, it's like just the title, and then that's it. And then
no music too, Anthony. No. Where is the Superman? Where's the Shirley Walker Superman the Animated Series theme?
Yep. That's what I'm saying. Like, I just keep coming back. It's jarring, and there's this dissonance because there's so much that feels familiar, but then aspects that aren't there. But kind of on this note of Superman the movie and the Richard Donner world. So a little bit with the font that doesn't go anywhere. But the characterization of Lex, like clearly aiming for something in the vein of Gene Hackman, failing, but all right, that's the intention. And then we do get to the very end of this, and the serum or the cure that Superman had brought for Lois, right? It's destroyed in battle with Brainiac, right? And he doesn't have it at the end.
Oh, right.
And she's on her deathbed, and the doctor calls it, and Superman cradles her, and he kisses her, and tears are streaming down. And I don't know if it was the kiss or the tears themselves, but he glows and she glows, and he brings her back to life, a la Superman the movie. We don't have time travel, but in that vein. And I did see, I feel like it was an interview with the director, Kurt Gita. We were not entirely sure of the pronunciation. It was also written by Dwayne Capizzi, but one of them, I think it was the director, talked about, I guess, one of the ideas for this being like taking that moment from Superman the movie and really fleshing it out and making it a bigger part of the film. I mean, I'm curious how that aspect of the film kind of landed with you.
I didn't really make that connection, honestly. I was thinking more, guess Smallville, when Chloe cries and resurrects Lois in the season 6 finale, which came out around the same time, by the way. Which one came first? Call the lawyers, somebody. But interesting. Resurrecting Lois Lane, Superman at the end of a movie. I love that ending for Superman the movie. I know it's controversial, but so much of that weight is on the emotional power of what Superman is experiencing here. And here, I'm like, I mean, look, I'll give it. This is dark. I'm like, I assumed this is like, let's kind of kidify it for the kids. Right? I mean, that's what I had assumed. Like Superman the animated series, I don't know, it's for 8-year-olds. Let's make it for 5-year-olds. Like, let's make it a Burger King Happy Meal McDonald's Happy Meal. You know what I mean? A fast food Happy Meal version of Superman the animated series, right? But no, Lois is gonna die. Like, she is on her deathbed. People are upset. What can we do for her, Doc? Oh, not she doesn't have long. I'm like, this would not air on Kids WB. This is too dark for that. So that's interesting to me that they went this dark place on what I assume would be a more sillified version of the show that we like. No, that's a good ending. And then like the mirror scene, it's a mirroring of the scene that turns out Superman was in the Phantom Zone when he gives Lois the cure and she's like, Clark? He says, yes. And then she says, Clark is like, no, it's me, Superman. I'm like, oh, so he has seen that because of this experience of her getting this kryptonite poisoning. Although, now that I think about it, he had the same experience earlier in the Phantom Zone when he told.
Yeah.
So you think the lesson he learns is, oh, Lois got hurt by Brainiac. I can't tell her my secret, which is what he comes to at the end. But in the middle, when Lois has still been hurt by Brainiac, he decides to tell her the secret. I just now talking about it made that conclusion. So now points taken off for you, movie.
Well, we might have to take off some more because, right, it's not unlike Superman 2, right? His takeaway seems to be like he can't reveal who he really is and be with her and be in this open relationship, such that when she wakes up at the end of the movie and she says Clark, he's like, no, it's Superman. Like he doesn't go along with it.
Right.
And he even goes so far as to, he's planning to leave. Like he's going to leave the Daily Planet. Right. But then he has this moment at the end where he sees her rushing off into danger. And it's sort of like, whether I'm here or not, she's going to be rushing off. So it's like he can be there and he can be in her life, but he's still not prepared to reveal his secret identity.
It was also a little undercutting of Lois. I felt like, well, if she's going to keep doing this, I better be around to rescue her. And I'm like, that was, it was kind of an odd note to end on. I thought as well. Yeah,
it's the sort of thing where, I mean, not that I would have wanted Clark to leave the Daily Planet, whether it was to be a foreign correspondent or just to leave altogether. I mean, that would not have felt right. I would have loved if he could have taken that step forward with her and we could have actually seen not a phantom induced hallucination, but if she actually learned that Clark is Superman and they had a genuine true moment to like, just to see that between those quasi versions of the character.
Well, why not? It's a one-off movie.
Yeah.
You don't have to follow it up with anything. I guess they're trying to connect. It's this whole always trying to connect with the movies thing, right? Oh, she doesn't know when Superman returns. We can't tell her when Superman BRAINIAC attacks. I'm like, what kind of logic is that? It's so strange. Like it could have been a kind of nice series finale for the show in a way, because the show ends like it has a finale, but then didn't plan on it being a finale. It ends up being a great two-parter, right? The Legacy, I think, is the name of the series finale, with Darkseid's invasion and all that stuff. So it's heavy stuff. It's a great epic episode, but there wasn't really any kind of emotional conclusion to the show. And this could have served as that, which is another frustration. So the production value is poor, weird creative choices, also missed opportunities left and right. So it's like across the board frustration for this thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's the thing. It's like, man, this was your opportunity. That's what really bothers me. And also, like I'm saying, and when we're talking about taking off points, it's just like, I don't know. Clark's ultimate conclusion to stay, but not reveal his secret. I mean, I don't know. I get just resets the status quo, but I don't know. Since we were in this movie territory, it would have been nice to move forward or have a more dramatic, have him leave. I mean, they would never have done that, but I don't know. Just do something else. So yeah,
well, there was no need to reset the status quo because we're not in an episode of Superman the Animated Series.
Yep.
Like if this was a 30-minute episode of Superman the Animated Series, they'd be like, oh, remember that one where he was in the Phantom Zone and thought he told Lois and she didn't and all, I mean, but now it's like, what is to be gained from this movie? Everything you see here, well, actually not. Actually, I'm contradicting myself already because there is stuff you see here you don't see in the show. See, that's just why this is frustrating, all. This is why it's frustrating.
One of our audience members, shout out to Man of Steven. I think he posted on X and tagged us. There's a 30-minute fan edit of this. I did not watch it. I don't know if you took a look at it.
I didn't want to watch it until we had done this conversation because I don't want to be like, well, when the fan edit, gotcha. I would be so compelled to say that with all of our, criticisms, but I am interested to check that out. I'm going to subject myself to Brainiac Attacks again, out of curiosity, because like we were talking about, there is potential here to not totally toss it away. If you're a hardcore Superman the Animated Series fan, again, you're like, it's like, I don't know. I can't, you know what? Only you can decide for yourself if this is worth checking out. I cannot recommend it either way for you guys out there. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I would say if you're listening to this, you've never watched it. It's an hour and 10 minutes or something like that. It won't take up your whole night. If you're curious enough, it's worth a spin. You got it as a gift, like you said, from Lance. I bought it on Blu-ray, which I know you were struck by. I said, if there was a 4K, I would have gotten that. No, that's pushing it, but
the only way to experience Brainiac Attacks.
Not a single special feature on this thing other than trailers, I think.
Okay. Yeah. Well, see stuff like this though. I would love like a commentary. Like an honest, like, look, guys, they gave us this list of things we couldn't do. Like, I would love to hear a commentary by the creators of this, because look, as we are all well aware, right? So much goes on behind the scenes with any of these projects, with these big IPs, Superman as well, right? I would love to see, we got to find these guys at a convention and interview them. Right? Do it, man. You have the connections. You got some great guests on this show. Track these guys down and just have hey, look, I watched the movie. Have some questions. Maybe we'll have a fun conversation about it. Yeah. I would love to know what happened behind the scenes here.
I would too. And like on that note, and I know we both try to be as fair as possible and recognize, like you said, that there are, and for this in particular, I think we have a fairly clear sense, the parameters that we're given. And so it's like, if you're tasked and you're not in charge of the designs that are going to be used, but like you're putting this together, and these are your parameters. We have to have Brainiac. We have to have Lex. There's going to be this freedom to explore some more emotional territory, but we want more humor with Lex. Think Gene Hackman. It's like, I think this is where you land. I mean, I feel like the creatives involved, assuming that these were kind of firm parameters that they were given. If that turns out not to be the case, I'll walk that back. But assuming like that, those are the parameters, I think this is what you get. I didn't watch that fan edit, but I am confident. Looking at this, it's like, yeah, I think there's a solid 30-minute version of this. Interestingly, I mean, like, I think you could pretty much just excise Lex from this. You just have the Brainiac attacking. Yeah.
I'm curious to see what they do in this fan edit, because if you think about it, you could have Brainiac just show up in his weird robotic form. Yeah. And he could just see where Superman is just because, right? And that's all there is to it. So there is a potential here to do a fan edit, and well, the one has been done. So I'm looking forward to checking it out. That's if you could just remove Lex, because you're right. We love Corey Burton. He is such an iconic voice as Brainiac. It's a haunting, just unemotional voice. But this one, like, Lance Henriksen, he's bad. It's just like the direction is like, I don't know, just be yourself. But even before he's in that weird, dollar store robot design, he's like smiling and stuff when he's the DCAU Brainiac. I'm like, this is so off, the characterization. Like, there's no need for that.
It is, but and this is the funny thing. It's like, it is off, but it's not as off as Lex is. And I feel like by comparison, it's more palatable. I think if Lex weren't, I don't know, maybe the fan edit doesn't work, because it's like, if it's just Brainiac, then it would stand out more. But yeah, next to Lex, this Brainiac feels like, okay, I not my favorite, not as good as Corey Burton, but it's like, I can live with it. The characterization is not as afield as it is with Lex. But I think that's the way you do it. And also, it's like, if you're trimming it down to 30 minutes, we're taking out a lot. I feel like maybe that ending, if we're resetting the status quo, so to speak, we kind of bump up against it less, because we haven't spent as much time building towards kind of something bigger. So if we really kind of rework it in that way, it actually maybe could function as a fairly satisfying episode of the series.
Look, no disrespect to the actors, especially the late Powers Booth, but the ultimate fan edit would be, just replacing their voices with Corey Burton and Clancy Brown, just for continuity's sake, if nothing else, honestly, because that's what's so strange about, like, how can you have the entire Daily Planet cast? Because if you were able to cut Lex out of this and just have the Brainiac, I'm like, you could probably get by with it. Anyway, so now just talking about it now, I'm excited to go check out this fan edit. It's funny. Now I'm going to suggest, I haven't watched it for 20 years. Now I'm going to go watch an alternate version of it. Incredible. This is what we do as fans.
Is there anything we haven't talked about with Brainiac Attacks that we'd be remiss if we didn't?
No, I don't think so. I mean, there's really not much to this, really. I think we hit on every angle of it. And yeah, and it had it been a 30-minute random episode of Superman the Animated Series, it would not be infamous the way it is. It's infamous because it's like, hey guys, Superman the Animated Series is finally getting a movie. And I know that's not what it is, but that is what it is. That's what it is. And you compare it to Batman Mask of the Phantasm and even the other Batman Animated Series movies, and it's like, wow, like, way to go. This does not help. Tying back to what I said at the very beginning about Batman and Superman and the DCAU, it does not help the cause when it's like, yeah, they really love Batman stuff, but when it came to Superman, sometimes, he didn't get the attention and care he needed. And I understand wanting to make a tie-in, right? I mean, that's what Batman, Mr. Free Sub-Zero, tie into Batman and Robin, right? Much superior to Batman and Robin. Go check it out, everybody. This Superman Returns, regardless of where you fall in Superman Returns, much better than Superman Brainiac Attacks. So, like, if you're a completionist and you want to collect everything and see everything, like you said, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably like us and you're like that. Check it out. I mean, it's on DVD, it's on Blu-ray. It's not that expensive. Just judge it for yourself, because I do think it's not good, right? But I do think there's stuff in here that will surprise you that you might not expect.
Yeah, there's enough. Yeah, that's the thing. Well, also too, it's like, Lex, he doesn't have a tiny role, but it's not like he's in every scene of this. So it's maybe more watchable than people might have been led to believe. And there's enough there that's interesting that makes it worth the watch, despite the aspects that are really off-putting. I guess my last thing, unless there's anything else that you have, is that, we've been talking a lot about how, I think if we had our way, this would have been full on within Superman, the animated series, with our voice cast. But if they had full on recast and redesign the characters, like, I can't help but wonder, especially if this was meant to tie in with Superman Returns, which is set in the world of the Donner films, like, to have a Donner-esque you think about Superman 78 comic book miniseries, the first one in particular, that did a Brainiac story. I can't help but think if we had gotten something like that in animated form instead of this.
Well, I mean, Superman Returns doesn't even look anything like the Richard Donner movies, though. That's its own. That's not like. So, what do you pick?
Yeah, true.
Right? I would be interested in either one, really.
Either. I would take either. Yep.
Pick one, right? and just carry on from that. It would have been nice to have a true, like, talking about the DC animated movies that came out after Superman Doomsday. Batman Gotham Knight. Nobody knows this anymore. That was supposed to take place between Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. So that's like this. It's vignettes and stuff. So it's not like a full movie, but it's like tangentially connected to the Christopher Nolan trilogy. So it would have been nice if this movie was tangentially connected to Superman Returns, which then is tangentially connected to the Christopher Reeve films, just to have more of that universe, right? Because we're always looking for more of these different interpretations. So yeah, that would have been the answer for me. Like, just base it off whatever production art they have for Superman Returns, make it a straight up Superman Returns tie-in, and take it from there. You mentioned Lex. I'm calling out the thing, because look, people have been ripping this apart for 2 decades. So we're calling out things we enjoyed. So it probably sounds like we enjoyed it more than we did, but this is where the conversation's gone. The scene where Lex has Brainiac's little, like, chip, like, in the lab, and he's talking to it. And he's like calling him, like, Brainy Baby or whatever, like talking the way Gene Hackman does. And Brainiac says, like, your tone implies a familiarity that has not been earned. Like, that was a good line. It was a good line from Brainiac.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, look, there are other things that I've watched where it's like, oh man, this is such a slog to get through. I mean, I didn't necessarily feel that, watching this, but no, to your point about what this could have been as a tie-in to Superman Returns. Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of different directions you could have taken it, and especially given the fact that Superman Returns, the whole idea is Superman's been gone for 5 years. It's like that, you could do any number of things. What I'm about to say is not directed at the creatives involved in the actual making of this, because my instinct is really that they were kind of hamstrung by these parameters. So this is really directed at the executive level here, but I can't help it. This just feels so slapped together like an afterthought. Like, we need something. We need something, some animated thing to put out when Superman Returns comes out. And there were so many other opportunities, like we're talking about, that I think could have been a lot more effective and meaningful. And like, that's what kills me about this. That's just the way it comes off.
Missed opportunities. And, in wrapping up our Kryptonian AI episode of your Brainiac series here, I don't even know if he was a Kryptonian AI in this movie, Anthony.
Well, listen, this wasn't getting its own episode, so this is where it goes. But yeah, I mean, fair, I guess. I guess that maybe is a little bit of an open question.
Son of Krypton.
Yeah, I mean, we are kind of transposing what we know from Superman the Animated Series, but that might not actually be accurate. We're not told one way or the other.
Yeah.
It's so close in time to Justice League Unlimited, like I'm assuming, but yeah, that's a fair question.
There you have it. What a note to end on.
Was this the nail in the coffin of the Kryptonian AI? Like after this, they're like, all right, do something. Because then the Jeff Johns reinterpretation is just a couple years after this. So
we got to right the ship.
All right. Well, listen, this was a lot of fun, and it was really helpful kind of sorting out, kind of some conflicting thoughts on the Kryptonian AI Brainiac. I like I said, had long been a fan, then was kind of encountering some hurdles here, but maybe we've cleared them with this. But the stage is set next week for the finale of our Brainiac event. We're going to talk about the one true Brainiac in the modern era, brought to life by Jeff Johns and Gary Frank, and then we've seen this manifested in a bunch of different stories across media in the years since, and we'll be getting into all of that. I still think I'm going to land on that being kind of my preferred version, but a lot to say, for the Kryptonian AI take, and we said it, and I thank you so much for joining me, and for I'm honored that this was your first viewing of Brainiac Attacks, and you came here to talk about it. So thank you.
No, absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's, when you put stuff off for so long, like you feel like there has to be a reason, an occasion for something. I'm saving it for a special occasion. Well, this is a special occasion. So thanks for having me back. Always fun to talk about Superman with you, Anthony.
Likewise. It's I was thinking about this though. It's like, doing these podcasts for as long as we have, I talk a lot about this idea of gaps in our fandom, and doing this for so long, I don't have as many gaps, stuff that I haven't read or watched. I mean, pre-crisis is still a vast sea, but especially in terms of watching things, there's not much left. And so there was actually something kind of bittersweet about finally popping this in, because it's like, yes, I'm closing another gap and all of that, and we're gonna have a great conversation. And we did, but it was also like, oh man, this was kind of one thing kind of floating out there that it's like, I knew it was new to me, and now it's not anymore. So it's a little bittersweet feeling on that note.
There you go. But hey, you're going to get a new movie with Brainiac in it next year. Look at it that way. Yeah. I'll take that trade.
Yes. Fair enough. All right. Thank you. I hope everyone will check out Always Hold On to Smallville, the ultimate season. It's a lot of fun. It's underway now. Go check it out. Thank you, audience. Make sure you come back next week for the grand finale of our 4-part Brainiac event. Until then, as always, it's about what you do. It's about action. This podcast is an affiliate of BCW Supplies. The next time you need to restock on comic book bags, boards, boxes, and more, be sure to use promo code FSP to save 10% on your order. That's FSP for Flat Squirrel Productions. It helps support the show too. Thank you. Support the show and receive exclusive content by becoming a member at patreon.com/Anthony Desiato. Rewards include our DCU spinoff podcast, advanced listens, sponsorship opportunities, and more. My sincere thanks to all patrons. Please rate and review the podcast via your platform of choice, subscribe so that you never miss an episode, and continue the conversation by joining us on social media. By popular demand, Digging for Kryptonite merch is available at our TeePublic store. Visit the link in the show notes to get your DFK shirts, hats, mugs, and more. Flat Squirrel Podcast is also home to Lighting the Bat Signal, a Batman fan journey, which applies the signature Digging for Kryptonite approach to the Dark Knight, as well as another exciting episode in the Adventures of Superman, now in its final year covering the classic George Reeves series. Subscribe today. Digging for Kryptonite is a Flat Squirrel production. Key art by Isaiah Simmons and theme music by Dan Pritchard.